and welcome back to the channel, Survive the Wild. So, I said I was going to do a bit of a Q&A, and this is it. And what I'll do is I'll just run right into it. I might do another Q&A at some point, so you know, keep your questions coming. I've picked 3 out. Some of them are questions and statements, but anyway. So, the first question. I just want to check that the camera's still recording as well. Yeah. Oh, it's alright, it's been playing up a bit this morning. So the first question is from Phil, and he asks, what happens if a storm comes in and your lean-to is facing the wrong direction? And then he also goes on to sort of like say, I would set my fire before dark. I'm believing you mean in actually lighting the fire before dark, and then prepare my sleeping area. I would suggest a reflective blanket behind the fire instead of going to the trouble of building a wood fire reflector. It may be more rustic, but the objective is to be comfortable. Okay, so I'll answer the last question first. Yeah, you can. There's nothing wrong. You know, you can't. I'm not saying you can't do that at all. If you've never done built like a wooden fire reflector before with dead wood, try it. You'll be amazed actually of how much heat does get reflected back. In terms of myself using, if I was using like a reflective blanket with a lean-to setup, I would have it behind the lean-to itself, so when the heat comes from the fire and hits the reflective blanket, it sort of gets sent down towards me, and that is a very effective way. I've seen other people actually put a reflective blanket over the top of the fire at a bit of distance, and that works as well. Yeah, having one behind the fire instead would work. Personally, I wouldn't do that because, one, you know, if you've got a bit of a breeze, you're going to probably hear it flapping, especially if it's one of them emergency style blankets, and the noise will just irritate the hell out of me and probably anyone. And also, depending on the size of the fire, I would be concerned that, you know, I'd have to put it far enough away from the fire that I knew one, it's not going to melt, and two, it's not going to actually catch fire itself, or the plastic coating that's on it wouldn't melt and catch fire. So, so going to the other part of the question was which was the first question. If you're putting you put a lean-to up and a storm comes in and it's facing the wrong way. Now, I'm assuming you watched the stealth bushcraft video, bushcraft camp video that I did, where I did a lean-to. If you notice, the ridge line that I put across was in the middle of the tarp. So if the weather really did kick in, and it was absolutely bucketing it down with very heavy winds coming towards me, all I'd have to do is just untie. Well, I wouldn't even have to untie, because where I'd put them stakes in, I'd wrapped the cord round a bit and then pulled it down to a peg. All I'd have to do is pull, but get a bit of slack back on that line, pull it back down lower, so you're creating more like an A-frame tent, and any of the slack that's then created, and you just wrap that back round the peg to get that tension on there, and that would keep you cozy and dry. Generally I always check the weather forecast before I go out, so I've got a rough idea of what's coming, and I would also work out what the direction of where you're facing, and sort of, if you know the area fairly well, you might know roughly where the prevailing wind lies. You know, here where I live, predominantly the prevailing wind comes from the west, and if I'm doing a lean-to, I generally tend to have the wind, say this is my lean-to, I generally tend to have the wind travelling either forward or back in front of my setup, rather than having the wind coming from behind or in front. One, if it's coming from the front, it's just going to blow the smoke towards you. If the wind's coming from behind, it's still going to blow the smoke towards you, because as the wind goes up and over your tarp, as it then drops down, you've got a warm air current coming up, and it just spirals that air back under and into your lean-to. So that's the general directions of what I do. The other thing is, if you're camping in the woodlands, you, particularly in summer, but you'll still find it in in the later months, like into winter, that when it rains, the rain, even if above the canopy it's blowing virtually horizontal, by the time it's gone through hitting all the branches, it's usually dropping down, because even in winter there's less wind that gets pushed through the trees, because there's so many barriers there. It generally tends to still come down more of a straight angle. But yeah, easiest way to do it is just to drop the front of your tarp down, and it's pretty much problem solved. So let's go back onto here. Oh yeah, and you said about you would set your fire before dark and then prepare your sleeping area. Yeah, if you're in an area where you've got permission, that's fine. If you are like the majority of people that do go out into the woods and camp out in the woods, most people don't have permission. So that's why when you're doing a bit of a stealth camp, you are wanting to be noticed as little as possible. So by setting your fire before it goes dark, that smoke column that rises up, particularly when you first set the fire, because there'll always be some moisture in there until there's enough heat generated in the fire before it more or less stops smoking, that if you're in a valley, or if you're up the side of a valley, on the other side of the valley, if somebody, if there are dwellings over there, somebody's going to be able to see that, and they might think, oh, it's a forest fire, and you'll probably find yourself in a lot of trouble. But if you're out in the absolute middle of nowhere and there's no risk of anyone coming along, or if you're in Scotland, then you'll be fine, because you can do that. In England, things are a little bit more awkward. Having fires in the woods are generally seen by the public as a no-no. And even if you had permission, quite often doing that, people that might live close-ish by, and when I mean close-ish by, if you're in a valley, that could be, with a mile or two, and they're not going to know that you've got permission there, and they still might, phone the authorities. So yeah, that's the reason why I set a fire afterwards. Is if I haven't got permission, people are less likely to know that I'm there. But anyway, thanks for your comments, thanks for getting in touch. So next question comes from Steve. Hold on, let's make sure it's still recording. Yep, that's just getting light. Right, so next question is from Steve. Nice video, Dan. As I'm new to all this stealth and wild camping stuff, I've noticed in a lot of videos that people seem to use good gloves. What other gloves am I using? Are you using? Other question is, roughly where are you in that video? This was put on the stealth camp video again. So to answer the last question first, again, I'm roughly on the eastern side of the Peak District. I'm not going to say any more than that, I'm afraid. In terms of gloves, So yeah, sorry if if you were wanting maybe the actual woodland where I'm going, but yeah, that was a stealth camp. Like in the previous question, it was a stealth camp. I hadn't actually got permission to be there, so I don't really be broadcasting it out, which I hope you'll understand. So in terms of gloves, these are gloves I use. I actually, your question was what are the gloves that I use? I don't know. I picked them up in a charity shop. I know that's not particularly helpful. They seem to be like a sport type of glove. Either golf or maybe football, I think, possibly. But these they're alright, they're not the best. They're actually wearing out a little bit. I could probably do with some new ones, but they're okay. But in general, yeah, gloves, you can use anything that's got something that's going to protect your hands. So I mean, you can use gardening gloves. I've seen a lot of people use gardening gloves for out in bush, out in the bush and various things. Just I'd say get what you can afford, really. There are, there's many different types of gloves out there. You're better off with something that's got leather on it, because that's going to protect your hands from things like thorns and splinters and that sort of thing. And if you're using them around the campfire as well, the heat's going to transfer a lot less through the leather, because leather's a bad conductor of heat. So yeah, just get what you can afford, really. As long as they work, it doesn't really make a huge difference, in my opinion. I'm not one of these that will go out and spend like 30, 40, 50 quid on a pair of gloves because they've got a brand name to them. I'll get something that works. I think I paid about £3 for these, like I say, in the charity shop. So yeah, that works for me. But yeah, just like I said, just get whatever you need, really, or whatever suits your budget. As long as it works, it works. So sort of hope that answers your question. But yeah, thanks for getting in touch, and feel free to ask me anything else. Right. Ooh, I'm actually sitting on my gloves now because this rock's a bit cold. And before anyone gets in touch and says, yeah, sitting on cold stones gives you piles, it's an absolute myth. It doesn't. So this it comes from Rebecca. It's more of a, I thought I'd include this. It's not particularly a question as such, but I thought you did raise quite a good point, and I know a little bit about this because I used to do a lot of biking, and it's basically about nutrition. And Rebecca asks, or says, nice video, good demonstration of skills. One point I'd like to make, your meal seemed light on carbohydrates, or at least from your description, from the contents. Carbohydrates would give you more energy and thus internal heat. Have you thought about carrying couscous? It's lightweight, easy and fast to prepare. And thank you for sharing your time in the outdoors. Be well, be safe. Well, thank you. I will. So, again, this question is from the last video that I did. Not the last photo, sorry, the last camp out one I did, the South Bushcraft camp. Yes, carbohydrates you do need. They are, good, long-lasting energy source. And I do actually carry couscous with me. It is light and easy to prepare, and it is something I would recommend. You can get them in little packet sachets, and I'm trying to remember, I think you get generally in the sachets, I mean, if you take sort of like an Ainsley Harriet one, there's other ones, like Tesco do them, even Aldi do them, they're like 45p a packet, something like that. I think they're around about, I should have looked it up really, but I'm trying to remember. They're around about 200 calories, give or take, per sachet, and they're supposed to serve 2. Now, if you're just eating that, it serves 1. Yeah, it'll fill you up, and yes, it'll get that type of carbohydrate gets the muscle, puts the energy back into your muscles, particularly if you've been out doing something strenuous, like if you've been out on a long hike or you've been biking or walking. It's a good way of getting carbohydrate back into your muscles, ready for use. The meal that I had was very protein based. It did have some carbohydrates. I put a cup of soup in there because it was like a bit of a stew that I made, and the base of the cup of soup is cornstarch. So there's that equals as carbohydrate. In terms of energy use, when you ingest meat, it actually kicks up your metabolism, and as you're breaking down the meat in your stomach, it actually generates more internal heat in your system. You will lose, I think, for every 100 calories of meat, you'll burn, I think it works out at about 25 to 30% is converted into heat as you're digesting it, and then so you retain about 75-ish, 70-75% from the per 100 calories. Now, what I take with me, I put in, and I've taken this on when I've done long treks, when I've been out for 5, 6 days, 7 days plus, is salami. Now, the salami is you've got protein and you've got fat, and usually it's got quite a high concentration of fat in there. It's usually around about 25% fat content. Now, in terms of fat versus carbohydrate, eating fat is far more efficient. You will retain, I think it's about 96% of the actual energy that you consume, the calories you consume, will go into your system, as opposed to like the meat that when you're metabolizing it, when you're digesting it, you'll lose 30 up to 30%. And also, because with the salami, you're getting both benefits. So you're getting the heat in you from the breaking down the protein, and then you're retaining the you get that's warming you up internally as you're eating it, as you're breaking that down. You're getting the protein to help rebuild your muscle from your activities through the day, and the fat that you consume gets converted back in and stored as fat and as energy, and you'll generally store that easier and longer than carbohydrate. So yeah, I would say have a bit of a mixture, and it also depends. It all depends on individual people as well. Everyone metabolizes at different rates. So, but yeah, I don't always have some meat out with me. I do like to cook a bit of steak on a fire, and I do often, when I pick the steak, I do go for a steak that's got a higher fat content than a very leaner one, especially at this time of year. A good example is, I think, if you're out in very cold conditions and you haven't got a source of carbohydrate around you, you actually need to be consuming, I think it's around 40 grams of fat per day, which it sounds quite a lot. It's actually not, but you do need fat anyway. Your body needs it, your brain needs it, but it needs to be various different fats. And you know, for years people have said, you know, the doctors and the experts have said, oh no, animal fat's bad for you, and you know, dairy fats are bad for you, like butter and cheese and that sort of thing. And I've always said for ages, it's a load of rubbish. It's what we would naturally consume. You know, we're not designed to eat like vegetable fats in like rapeseed oil. It wouldn't naturally occur in our diet. We might have a bit of things from maybe sunflower seeds and nuts. They're a little bit more the fats that we would like vegetable style fats that we would be more having. But predominantly our diet would be made up of more animal fat. I mean, I recently had my cholesterol checks, and I eat quite a lot of animal fat, and my cholesterol is fine. It's so you can have it checked for both good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Mine's split down the middle, and there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But it's also about keeping active, getting out there, and being active on a daily basis. So anyway, hope they've, you know, that sort of helped. And like I say, you know, if anyone's got any other questions that they want to ask, go for it. Write in the comment box below. I'll do another one of these. Ooh, excuse me. Don't know where that came from. Yeah, write in the comment box below. Ask me anything, providing it's related to what I'm doing. You know, I don't want someone asking me what's my favourite colour, which is black, by the way. So, and it's not technically a colour, but anyway. So, hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something from this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.